All right, good afternoon. Welcome. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar event. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. It's promptly noon Eastern time here. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're here to talk about using sub-funds and sub-accounts in Church Windows accounting. Now, it's not really about using as much as setting up, I guess. That would be the way to look at that. We're going to be together for the next 20 minutes. Before we get started on our topic, a few things. Again, I will do my best to wrap things up by 20 minutes after the hour, out of respect for your taking the time to be with us today. I will certainly be happy to stick around and answer questions that you have about that. If you have questions, please type them into the questions panel of your webinar control panel. I will do my best to keep an eye on those and repeat those for everyone's benefit and see what we can't do to get those questions answered. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about using our setting up our sub-funds and sub-accounts. There may be another webinar event that is designed to answer the questions about the other portions of the software that you have, or of course, please contact our support team, 800-533-5227. Our support techs are always available and happy to help. We are recording today's webinar event, as we always do. We will be producing this video and putting it on the Support Center page of our website here in the next, 10 days, a week or 10 days, maybe a little longer. It all depends. So you can review that at some point later if you wish. Also, finally, our topic today is taken from our A102 Accounting 102 workbook, pages 27 through 35. If you're interested in the workbooks, of course, you can purchase those from the Church Windows website in a downloadable format, or we can print those and send them to you if you wish. But we do try to, keep with the workbooks, in conjunction with the webinars as much as possible in order to kind of help maintain a through line for you and your understanding of the software. So just an FYI, the workbooks are very handy with regards to that, okay? All right, so let's get into our accounting module here. We're clearly in our 2019 accounting year. So as the page on the workbook 27 talks about, a fund may be divided into categories called sub-funds. We're going to wind up setting up a fund with sub-funds, sub-ledgers in our chart of accounts today. But just by way of an example, it's going to be for our building renovation and church and parsonage renovation sub-accounts. But we already have one in our chart of accounts here under our fund balances called Memorial Fund Balance. So right here, we clearly see a main fund called Memorial Fund Balance right here. And notice there's a plus sign next to that on the left-hand side that when we click the plus sign, it reveals the sub-accounts that are listed underneath it, okay? Each sub-fund has its own income and expense accounts, and the total of all of the balances of the sub-funds will show in the balance of the main or parent fund. So if I click on my main memorial fund here and go to the balance tab, it shows me exactly what the balance of all of my collective sub-funds is. Okay, there is no activity that occurs on the main or parent fund, okay? That is just a ledger fund that ties all of those accounts together, but it itself will never have income and expenses, and it will not have transactions or cannot have transactions posted to it, okay? So we're going to add another fund to this list, parent fund, main fund, with some sub-funds. We're going to go up to Manage Accounts at the top left, Accounts Plus Minus, and Fund. And so right here, we're going to click in here, and we're going to type in, let's see, Building Renovation Fund. Tab down. It puts the word fund balance at the end of it. It now pops up and asks us to enter a 300 number. Funds always start with a 3. We're going to make this, 325-200. My current list of funds is listed down the left here, or down at the bottom. And if I have a subtotal I want to move it into, I can also, of course, choose that and add that to its respective subtotal here. We don't have any. It's going to create a subtotal on the chart of accounts and on our reports for this ledger and subaccounts automatically. Then we're going to click Add Account. So we now notice down here at the bottom we've got our new building renovation fund. Okay, let me get out my highlighter right here, building renovation fund. And notice over here on the column in the middle that says sub-funds, it shows 0. Okay. The reason why that occurs for this fund and not others is because my other funds, general operating, building fund, education, they don't meet the criteria that allows those funds to have sub-funds. They have either income or expenses or balances, so they cannot have sub-funds. My new building renovation does meet the criteria for that, and therefore I can add sub-funds to it. So we're going to click on that little ellipsis button, and yeah, again, it shows 0. Notice my memorial fund does show my 6 sub-funds there. So we're going to click on the little ellipsis. It now flips the screen, and it says setting up sub-funds for building renovation. Okay. And so here we're going to add our other new fund here for this, which is going to be our church repair and renovation fund. Okay, same thing, tab down, puts in fund balance. We're going to make this one 325205. Don't need to add the 3 there, Josh. It already does that. And then add account. Okay, adds that new sub fund. Going to click back up here, and we're going to call this one parsonage repair. I just simply can't type today, folks. And renovation fund. Tab down, adds the word fund balance. We'll make this one 25210. Add account. I've now added those 2 new funds with the funds with their sub-funds underneath it. Okay. So now when we go back to finish with adding subledgers for building renovation, now we see building renovation fund has a number 2 next to it because I now have the 2 sub-funds set up underneath that, and we see that in our tree view here. Let me again steer some focus right here, number 2. And then right here under our tree view, we've got our main renovation fund with the 2 sub-funds, right below it. Okay, right here. Okay. Now, I do have to add the subsequent income and expenses to these funds as well. Okay. So at the bottom of page 30, it's very important to note there on that it says once sub-funds are set up, they are treated as a unit. For example, if you're setting up a custom account group for reports, these sub-funds can't be split apart or pulled out independently. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to pull the sub-accounts and sub-ledgers out of the ledger to report on them separately. Okay? Very important. Okay? So, and it also points out there that once funds are summated into sub-funds, they themselves cannot have sub-funds. Okay? With that being said, I also cannot have income and expense sub-ledgers that are part of a sub-fund. Okay? It's simply it's a reporting nightmare if we do that, and so we've decided that you can either have, income and expenses that are sub-accounts as part of a fund, or you can have a fund with sub-accounts, but the income and expenses within those sub-funds cannot be set up as sub-ledgers, okay? Just generates too much confusion, okay? So now I've got to add the income and expenses for these new sub-funds. So I don't have to close any windows. I'm now going to go right up to income up here. Notice that my screen flips. I now have to choose my where's my building renovation fund. It now then forces me to choose which fund I'm adding my income accounts for. So I'll choose church repair and renovation. I'm going to call this one church repair and reno income. So I'm going to label this one 25200. I can again choose the subtotal. We'll call this part of our building fund income. We're going to add account. Okay. So I've added the minimum requirement of my income and expenses for a fund. I'm now going to go right up here to the top and choose my parsonage repair and renovation fund. Similarly, I'm going to add a parsonage repair and reno income. Again, 25205. Sorry, 210. My fault. Again, we're going to put this into our building fund income, subtotal, add account. Okay? So I've added the income accounts. I'm now going to go up to my expenses. Notice the screen flips. I could choose my building renovation fund. Again, forced to choose the subledger fund. Okay? And the process starts over. Church, repair, and reno expense, 25205, add account, choose my parsonage repair fund, call this one parsonage repair and reno expense, 25210. Again, choosing the appropriate subtotal, total, say, building and property, building, click add account. Okay? So we've now set up all of the income and expenses and funds that we have are needed for our parsonage or our church renovation for both our church building and our parsonage. Okay, I have all the components that we need to now report on these funds completely separately. Yeah, I might need to go over into donations and set up some giving accounts there and link them into our, into our new income accounts in our bank account, okay, our debit asset. We're not going to talk about that today. We don't have time for that. It's not covered in our workbook with regards to that. But definitely, depending on the project itself, there may be other components or other things that are involved, particularly as far as donations is concerned, that need to be done, okay? But from the accounting perspective, now when I go into something like my chart of accounts, collapse all, go down to my funds, okay, here's my memorial, here's my building renovation fund balance with the actual sub funds. If I go to my tree view, I now click on the plus sign here next to each one of those funds, and they do have at least one income and one expense. Okay, so that's how easy it is to set up, a new fund with fund subledgers to your chart of accounts. Okay, and it talks about you can also add the funds and sub-funds from the tree view in the chart of accounts. So, if I go, hey, I want to add in, a new income or new expense for my church repair renovation or my parsonage repair, all I have to do is right-click over the accounts on the tree view, and notice it says add income account to church repair, repair and renovation fund, or add expense. Okay, or I can add another fund subledger to my building renovation fund if I wish. Okay. Yeah, nothing now limits me from adding additional sub-funds or adding income and expenses to each one of these sub-accounts, okay? But I just want, again, in cementing it in your thinking, is if we go back to our add accounts and accounts plus minus, and I go to, say, income, and I choose my current fund, and I choose building renovation and choose that, notice on the right-hand side over here, it does not give me the opportunity for that column called sub-funds or sub-accounts, okay, just like we had before, like we did have with the others. That's what I was stating about how I can either have the subledger exist on the fund aspect of that or fund end of that, or I can have it occur on the income and expense side, but I can't have it be both, okay? So in this case, our church has chosen to have the subledger relationship occur at the fund level, not at the income and expense level. Okay, and if I toggle up to my, say, income or expense accounts, and I choose the church renovation fund and choose one of those, again, I still cannot choose to add or create expenses or expense or income subledgers. Okay. So the final topic here, with about 5 or 6 minutes left here, is to talk about on page 31, adding expense accounts. I'm sorry, not that. Adding income and expense accounts, adding a sub-accounts for income and expenses. Because again, you can do that. There are certain situations and circumstances under which that can occur. Okay? So if I now go to, say, we want to now separate out some property insurance into both our property insurance expense for our church versus our, say, parsonage, I can go into manage accounts, accounts plus minus, go to, say, expense. We're going to choose our general fund. And down here, we've got our, going to find our church property insurance right here, notice. Okay, so again, on the right-hand side, we now have the button that says sub-accounts, and there is an ellipsis with a 0, which tells us it meets all the conditions that allows us to add sub-accounts to this particular expense. No balance, no transactions, okay? And the fund itself is our general operating fund. It doesn't have sub-funds. So we click on that. It pops up. It grays out our general operating fund and property insurance. And we would put in here, you know, church property insurance. And again, requires that we add a unique expense account number for that. Let me find that account number here. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to find that. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm my fault. So I should have made a note of that expense account number here. 510405. So we'll maybe make this one 406 and 407. I'm struggling with that. So 510 406. Okay, sorry, my fault. Call this church property insurance 10406. Add account. I can choose parsonage in property insurance. Again, tabbing down and choosing 407. Let's use 408. Add account. So I've now added the sub-ledgers to that income or those expense accounts. So when I click back, again, now notice it shows a 2 here next to our property insurance with sub-ledgers. And when I go back to my chart of accounts here, under manage accounts and type in property insurance, it now has a plus sign next to it to reveal those sub-ledger expenses. Income accounts, folks, are generated or created as sub-ledgers in much the same manner, okay? If you go to manage accounts and accounts plus minus and you say go to income or expense, you know, here, you know, we are going to scroll down here. So right here, notice we've got church ed director, Christian education director and benefits doesn't have the ability to do that. Why? Most likely because it has transactions posted for the current year. We have entries. There's a balance in that account. I can't make it a sub-account. Okay, I can't have sub-accounts to it. Same is true for all of these others. We've posted bills to our gas, electric, and water expenses. Okay, you know what I mean? So I can't make those sub-accounts. I'd have to consider doing that as soon as I've opened my new year, before I've posted any transactions to those particular income or expense accounts. Okay. But yeah, then yes, I can post transactions to these sub-accounts all I want, okay? I can't go in and post them to the main account, you know, so if I go to something like enter bills and I go up here and I choose, you know, to be sure you're covered insurance company and I type in insurance, notice here it says church property, parsonage property. I cannot choose the main ledger called simply property insurance, okay? That account, those main accounts will never have entries posted to them no matter what I do. I can't post transactions to them no matter what. Okay? All right. So we're about a minute ahead of schedule here. Let me see what questions we've got here. I'm being asked, can transfers be done between 300 funds? Absolutely. That's a great question, Elaine. You bet. You go up to transactions, transfer, choose your 300 accounts here. Let's say choose our general operating fund. Once I transfer over, I can transfer between other funds at will. You bet. Great question. I can't hear you. How to unmute. Chris, I'm sorry I didn't see this. I'm sorry. I hope you were able to get logged on to audio, but yeah, no, the audio's coming through loud and clear. I'm sorry. Can you move an existing fund to become a sub-fund of a new fund? Denise, that's a great question too. Yes, of course. So yeah, if I go, okay, here I want to collapse all and go down to my funds. So here's a good question. So here I've got my main memorial fund and I've got my Elliott Achidia Memorial Fund balance here. I want to move that into my fund ledger called Memorial Fund. I highlight it. Over here on the right-hand side, we see the button called Add to Ledger right here. Hopefully everybody should see that. Okay. Then when I click that, click that button, it reveals the menu below it called Main Ledger. I choose my Memorial Fund. I simply hit Enter or Tab on my keyboard. Or Tab works better. Now notice it moves Elliott Achidia into my main ledger fund. It's now no longer a separate fund. Great question. Yeah, now there may be reasons why you can't do that may be related to your budgets, but that might be the only other reason why you might not be able to do that. For next question, for income and expense sub-accounts, do they appear on the treasurer's report? Does the main account also? Absolutely, Carl. That's a great question too. So if we go to treasurer's report, we have a bunch of sub-accounts and sub-ledgers. I'm not suggesting this be your knee-jerk response for setting these up, but for the purposes of our training data and our, as your software developer, we create ledgers and sub-accounts for all kinds of things. So yes, of course, we got our interest income, for our interest on our investments here set up as subledgers. If we go down into our expense account, we clearly see we've got all kinds of expense accounts set up here with italicized main ledger with the sub-accounts indented in their own subtotals. Great question. So yes, there's no need to create subtotals for those ledgers as they create a subtotal of their own. They're their own subtotal essentially. Great question. So just as a tagline to this, folks, again, sub-accounts and sub-ledgers and sub-funds are more restrictive from a reporting standpoint. So what I strongly recommend is that if you're unsure about what you're potentially possibly needing, we do have a video out here on the website on sub-accounts versus subtotals. So I can't stress that enough again, you've got a lot more reporting flexibility when dealing with subtotals than you are with sub-accounts, okay? So if we type that in here, we've got a video right here called Sub-Accounts or Subtotals. That was produced in 2017 right here. If you're, again, for the greatest amount of reporting flexibility, you're going to want to look at subtotals. There are times when subledgers and subfunds are warranted and necessary and important, but not all the time, okay? Because they are very restrictive reporting from a reporting standpoint. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions that have come in. Again, this video will be out on our website sometime in the next week or 10 days, folks. We hope it's been helpful. I will go ahead and end the webinar for everyone. If you have further questions about it, please don't hesitate to call us. And we hope to see everyone at another Church Windows webinar event. All right. Thank you. Everybody have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.